too want to thank everybody that's here today because it means a lot. And it brings honor to my dad and to our family. And you could be a lot of other places, but you're here. And we didn't talk about what we were saying today, so maybe there might be a little bit that's repeated, but I hope it will touch your heart and just make you grateful like my sister talked about. Legacy. I had to look that up just to think about and ponder. It's a long-lasting impact of one's life that's handed down from generation to generation. We all want to live a life and leave this earth better than we found it. My dad did this. His personality was as large as the footprint that he left. This legacy is evident in his lineage, even down to his great-grandchildren that he adored. He had so many attributes, just like my sister already told you, a lot of them, it's hard to even count them all. But I wanted to honor, I thought, how can I stand up here and do this? But I wanted to honor him, and I wanted to bring glory to the Lord, so do the hard things, right? But Dad was strong, Dad was brave, long-suffering, as Terry said, determined. It was an unbelievable thing to watch. He had heroic strength, a will to live that I can't wait to ask the Lord about how much of that, kept him here. But he had that will to live helped him face battles that seemed impossible. Over 12 years ago, my dad had lung cancer, and I got to sit right there and watch him give his testimony about that. He told of his hard experience losing that one lung and surviving cancer. It was during that season of life that Dad really came close to the Lord. Like most of us, he struggled with his worthiness a lot of his life. He had a hard time accepting that he was worthy of God's grace. But he endured, and during this extremely difficult time, I watched his heart change. And he came to know Jesus personally. And he learned unconditional love. And he learned how to depend on him. It was evident in his last days of life. And we witnessed it as a family, but so did the doctors and the nurses. They were astounded at the peace that he had, because he knew what was coming. He had dozens of trials that would follow that lung cancer. In 2020, when the earth was stricken with that deadly virus we all faced, my dad found himself alone. He was in and out of hospitals and rehabs. I don't even know how many times, dozens. But the Lord protected him. He never caught COVID, and all of that time, he was exposed a lot. And during that time, as Terry described, he mastered long suffering. There'd be months before he actually got to come home. And after he did, his resolve and determination to live increased yet again. During that time, Mom also had a health scare, and as Terry said, it caused them to make some big decisions. And so that's when I saw him be brave. And it's hard to move from this town that he loved. As you all can imagine, you've lived here most of your lives, 50 years. But on the other side of that fear, there was unspeakable joy. It was waiting for him in Bryan, Texas. Gave him 2 full years happiness with Terry, Tim, 3 grandchildren, their spouses, and 6 great-grandchildren. It was joy to behold the life and love that they cherished. Along with those tough traits that they've already described, he had thoughtfulness and generosity and a huge heart. He was so thoughtful. And like Terry said, not only he was a good listener, and he would recall what you said. He remembered your favorites, especially food. He genuinely cared about what was going on, like Terry said, and he would ask questions and he would focus on what you said, because then he would later ask you about that very thing. He was generous, as Terry said, not only with money, but his time and his talents. He loved his country, and he loved this community. And he gladly worked to make them both better. He didn't grow up with much money or food, and I think that's why he liked it so much. But in his later years, his finances grew, and so did his giving. It gave him joy to share what he had been blessed with. He loved giving gifts and making sure that you had what you needed. And as Terry said, he's sick in the hospital, and every day I'll walk in to talk to him. Did you get that desk ordered? Have you ordered the desk? Do you have the desk set up? So I could work at it while I was there visiting. And he was finally happy. I don't think he would probably still be here had we not that desk. He was happy when he saw a picture of it and saw it was ready for me. From a little bitty girl, he taught me the importance of showing interest in others and being kind to everyone, especially those that were not like me. It's usually a lot easier to love our friends and our family, but then what about someone less fortunate or even a stranger that you'll never even meet? Here's a couple examples of that. My dad befriended a man here in town. He was not as fortunate as most. And first, Dad gave him jobs around the house, which he legitimately needed help with. And as Dad got to know him better, and he observed this man's plight in life, he found more and more chores for him to do, some of those that were probably not so urgent. As their friendship grew, Dad learned of the man's ailing feet and how he suffered with gout. Since the man had no car, he was resigned to walking everywhere. Dad's mission became getting him some new shoes with lots of support to ease his pain. He searched until he found a perfect orthopedic shoe. Walking became easier for his friend, but additionally Dad said, I'm going to start driving you places. So he drove him to appointments, and he helped him in all different kinds of ways. My dad had a heart for this man because he too came from humble beginnings. He would often say, there but for the grace go I. Dad's friend abruptly left town, which was very disappointing to all of us. I asked Dad, I said, are you angry about him leaving without notice, or do you regret being his friend? He said, not at all. I do it all the same. I do it all over again. And I saw in this example firsthand how it's important to give graciously what we have and not necessarily expect anything in return. The Bible teaches us to love our neighbors as ourselves, but then what about a stranger? So I don't know how this started, but Dad started giving blood at Mississippi Blood Services years ago. And if you looked at the creases in both of my dad's arms, like right here, you would see two big round scars. He joked with his caregivers and told them, don't worry, I'm not a drug junkie. These scars came from many, many trips to donate blood. As was Dad's way, once he discovered that a single donation of platelets translated into several units of blood, and that he could even give it more, well, then he's going to be a platelet giver. He learned that he could help a lot more people, especially those with cancer, which was the disease eventually that he would have himself. But they would draw the blood from one arm, and they would transfuse it, pull out the platelets, and put it back in the other arm. So he would sit there like this for hours, donating his platelets. He would go frequently, and it became his mission to be one of the greatest donors, because that's just what he did. Always be the best at whatever you do, right? So out of curiosity, I thought, you know what, I'm going to call Mississippi Blood Services and I'm going to see how much he gave. Sweet lady answered the phone, and I told her about my dad, gave his name. Her name was Iris, and she remembered Dad very well. She immediately told all the co-workers around her and about his passing, and they had the same reaction. They all remembered him. She said, Mr. Fred always had a big smile, and he had a way of making your day, even on your worst day. And Dad, he loved making you laugh, cheer you up, and he was the master at telling jokes. Iris looked in the computer charts and told me, looks like here he gave 25.5 gallons of blood. I was like, what? Like, I had no idea. And they said, oh, wait. This was before we started taking records in our EMR. So she had no idea. But bottom line, we know he gave a lot, and he probably was one of the greatest platelet donors to people he didn't even know. And a funny story about that, in exchange for those platelets. And 2 or 3 hours of his time, every time he did that. And you want to know how soon can I come again? How soon can I come again? He gets to watch a free movie. He got snacks and some juice. And Terry and I had a tradition of telling him, oh, the next time you go, you need to watch this movie. And it would be a tearjerker. But we wouldn't tell him that. We just tell him the name. You got to tell him you want to see this movie. Okay. Well, he had a very soft heart. And so there he sat with 2 arms like this and tears streaming down his cheeks. The ladies would come up to him and say, Mr. Fred, you okay? You need a tissue? He'd say, my allergies are just acting up. And soon after that, he quit taking our movie recommendations. He wouldn't listen anymore. And as Terry said, that kidney stone surgery caused all the bleeding. And ironically, he was a great blood donor, right? He needed that blood. And his heart needed that blood, but he couldn't stop bleeding. So he had that choice of what to do. So in that time, he was getting blood transfusions. And after a while, after thinking about it, he said, you know what, I'm going to stop receiving that blood. We need to save it for somebody that really needs it. And we were like, you really need it? But he didn't, that's not how he was. He was always thinking of somebody else, and that could be used. And after you give that much blood, that was very important to him. My car trips from Lafayette to Bryan were numerous this last year. But especially in the last few weeks of his life, I had a great fear of not being there when my dad passed away. Dozens of times, he'd been out of the hospital, and even during COVID, he was by himself a lot. And I just wanted to be able to tell him goodbye and that I loved him. And I believe one of my dad's greatest fear was passing along by himself in the hospital. And our Heavenly Father is so faithful. And he heard our cry, and he was gracious to me and my sister, but to my dad. He got to come home, be in his bedroom, smoking with his dog, be with his family, see his grands and his great-grands, and eat his last indulgent request. He was a diabetic and had celiac disease. I want some Krispy Kreme donuts. My dad's unstoppable determination to live was eventually followed by a peaceful acceptance and trusting faith that Jesus was ready for him. His passing from this world to eternity in our arms, it was incredibly peaceful. His last words saying, "I'm so proud of you and I love you," will stay etched in my heart all the rest of my days. Dad, I am so thankful God gave me you as my earthly father. And gosh, I miss you. But I'm glad the suffering is over. And I pray that we continue to make you proud as we live out your legacy. I love you, and because we have Jesus, and because we have hope, I get to see him again soon.